The NFL draft is this week. And Alex, I want to ask you a question before we start getting into some of these prospects that we kind of like going into the first round. Does it not feel like this year, and maybe because we don't have a top 10 pick for the first time in what seems like ages, it's been kind of quiet. Like it doesn't seem like, I know there's been the Kirk Cousins stuff, but that's been going on for like a year. That it doesn't seem like anything's really new there. It's just like a different insider saying the same thing. But there hasn't been much going around, I feel like, about this NFL draft compared to usual.
You never hear a lot of rumors about the Eagles or the Chiefs because they pick at the back of the first round. You hear rumors and reports about the teams picking in the front of the first round, which is where the Falcons have been every single year under Terry Fontenot's tutelage, other than this year. This is the first time he's ever picked outside of the top 8 every single year, inside of the top 8, 3 8s and a 4. So this will be interesting to see what he can do. I mean, this is a big draft. This is, obviously the temperature inside Flowery Branch could be much different than what we perceive it to be, but it feels like it's make or break for Terry Fontenot.
Yeah, I mean, who had Landry Fields getting fired before Terry Fontenot?
No, and if you did, you're a liar.
That was not on my bingo card. But let's get into this first round pick. I know a lot of people want to do the whole trade back thing, and for obvious reasons, the Falcons should be intrigued if a team comes calling and will give them a day 2 draft pick. Because
let me just ask you this question. Today is always more valuable than tomorrow. Money today is better than money tomorrow. Why not? We've talked about it so much that this draft doesn't have a ton of stars, but a lot of starters. And if you don't come away with 3 to 4 starters, your GM did a bad job. And the Falcons obviously don't have a lot of draft picks. Why don't we trade like next year's third for this year's third, a third and a fifth or third and a sixth next year for a third this year, to a team that clearly doesn't need that third round pick as badly as maybe we do. That should be something that should be explored, right? Is that crazy? Am I just like,
I just don't know how many teams want to do that. I
guess you'd have to make it worth their while.
Yeah.
Third and a fifth, maybe.
I think
it might not even do it.
I think a third and a fourth or something like that would have to be what you got to do, or maybe 2/3. I don't know exactly what the formula is for those kind of trades because they don't happen too often. And because teams want, like you said,
today is better than tomorrow.
And they know the exact same thing that we're talking about, which is why. Yes, why do we all want a second and a third round pick in this draft? Because there's starters there, and every team knows that. So they're not going to be like, oh, let me give away a starter. Yeah. So it's going to be that. That's why I always said, yes, ideal scenario. That'd be great if it comes to fruition. We get it. We get 2 starters on day 2 and a starter on day 1. Hell yeah, Terry Fontenot, clap it up. But that's very, very difficult to do because everyone knows what we've been talking about the depth of this draft, which is very much, and the top end talent, which is very top heavy in the first few picks. But let's talk about some of these prospects. Let's assume that they're picking with the 15th pick in the draft. Who would be the ideal guy to you?
I guess really anybody who can sack the passer. Mike Green, I think, would be number 1. Then maybe Michael Williams. I'm assuming Jalen Walker will not be there. But if he did, Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, Mike Green, those 2 guys I think would be 1A, 1B. Shamar Stewart scares me a little bit only because, and it's not him, it's the Falcons' inability to develop literally anybody outside of the first round other than Drew Dahlman. So that scares me a little bit. He's the freak, the Texas A&M made in a laboratory Myles Garrett guy. He just didn't have the production that Myles Garrett did, or he'd be in conversations with Abdul Carter. James Pierce feels a little similar to Shamar Stewart in terms of you're going to have to, does he care about football? Questions about that. Vic Beasley is going to scare a lot of Falcons fans. James Pierce kind of has that vibe in some fans' eyes, but like literally any of those guys, I would be happy with.
Yeah. I mean, I listen, if they draft a pass rusher, I think we will always rejoice. Listen, it's a very tough position to nail. It's not a position where you normally get a guy that, even especially at pick 15, even in the first round, that he comes in and he's your Micah Parsons. Like those are few and far between. There's a lot of guys, think Talk McKinley, that you get in the first round that end up and amount to nothing. So it's outside of quarterback, I believe, the hardest position to really project, unless you're talking about guys that are just at the top of the draft, and
like Abdul Carter, you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, like Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, all those guys. Yeah, Khalil Mack, Von Miller. Yeah, like we knew those guys were going to be absolute studs. it's much harder to do at pick 15 in the draft. But I think Mike Green could be a guy that falls and you're like, okay, that guy has all the physical tools that he's probably a top 10 pick, and maybe teams are aware of the field things. The Falcons take a chance. That works out well. I like Mykel Williams a lot. I know he didn't show as much like on the field at Georgia as some people would say. He dealt with injuries last year, but he's a very, very young prospect. And when you look at the history of those Georgia Bulldogs, it's incredible. And he's got the body type to really be a game wrecker. But I think the two guys that I recently wrote about that would still be dreams, not outside of the pass rushing landscape, is Mimbu out of Missouri. He's one of the top tackle prospects in the draft. Don't think he's going to fall to 15. But he is a true right tackle. Started 33 games at Missouri as a right tackle. Might be the best tackle prospect in this draft. He could slide in and be your day one blindside protector immediately. And maybe teams that are looking for left tackle, him playing right tackle is kind of a red flag. For us, it's perfect. And if somehow he changes, I don't expect there to be much of a hesitancy. I think they will go out there and make that selection. And I think the Will Johnson stuff is so overblown. Yes, he's not the fastest corner out there. He's not going to be your Jalen Ramsey man-to-man guy that everybody's in love with that's locked down on an island. But in terms of a defense that loves to play zone, like the Atlanta Falcons, you couldn't find a better guy to play cornerback across from A.J. Terrell.
I'm not comparing him to Richard Sherman, but Richard Sherman ran like a 5.3 40. I don't even know. It may have been slower than that. Richard Sherman was a 4th-round pick out of Stanford, 5th-round pick out of Stanford, and thrived in that Dan Quinn defense up there in Seattle. And guess who's running the defense here in Atlanta? Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich, who stem from that Dan Quinn coaching tree. So kind of think of that same kind of guy who might not be, what he lacks physically, he makes up mentally, the anticipation factor in playing the position. I agree. I really think, we're talking about 15 is harder to, obviously, it's harder to nail a 15th pick than an 8th or even a 4th, which we didn't do with the 4th overall pick. But like the more and more mock drafts I see, the more and more like how this draft is going to shake out and how I'm trying to like foresee it, it really looks like it's an unlosable situation for Terry Fontenot. And I don't want to put that kind of pressure out there because we know that Terry Fontenot is not the best in the business and the NFL draft is incredibly difficult to do. I don't want to downplay how hard it is to be this guy, but every single time, like all of those guys, like at least 3 or 4 of those guys that we just talked, about are going to be available. And it feels like every single one of them will be pretty damn good.
You're going to get an opportunity with the 15th pick. It feels like that you're going to be able to draft the single best prospect at a position of need.
Yeah.
Like whether it's the right tackle in Mimbu, whether it's Will Johnson.
Dude, if Mason Graham falls, the interior defender from Michigan, for some reason, I don't think he is, that guy would wreak havoc.
Someone's going to fall.
Someone is going to fall.
Like you could get there is going to be, plenty of guys that are ready to be impact defenders right out of the gate.
Jahdae Barron, that Texas cornerback who can play every single position, safety, nickel, cornerback, that guy.
Malachi Starks. I mean,
like we just named 12 prospects who are expected to go from 10 to 25.
Yeah, which is why the trading back thing would be intriguing, which makes a lot of sense. And listen, I don't know if an opportunity will arise, but if Shedeur Sanders starts to fall, if someone really falls in love with Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart, like that quarterback situation is something Falcons fans, I think, will really want to monitor on draft day because that's when teams really start to actually be like, all right, I got to move up to go get that guy. So I pay attention to that. A lot more to talk about coming up after the break.